So this week's video starts at the end. Here is the end product installed. This is a rose arch for some customers of mine who are getting married. So I thought we'd start at the end and then show how I made it. So that there was the drawing I did on the iPad. Took a photograph of the space and then drew on top to give them an idea of what it was I was able to create and what I thought would work well in the space to sort of go over the seat without framing out the entrance into the back garden. Then order some steel, so this is some 20mm bar, and wheel the press. This is my homemade press. There's a video of me making this machine on here somewhere, but this is an incredibly useful machine. It's on wheels, so I can wheel it out of the workshop, and with this setup, with the round bar and in this case a piece of RSJ, it'll easily bend this 20mm OD steel bar. And it makes it really easy, well, not really easy, but it makes it far easier to be artistic with the metal when you can bend it in a very, very controlled way without using a huge amount of effort. If you had to put this in a vise and bend it by hand, you'd have a lot less control over what you were making. And also what I've done to aid in the control is make it in different pieces which are then welding together. So there we go, that's the main frame, and there is a sketch, but really I'm playing with the metal here and seeing where it wants to go and then nudging it about with the press to make the shape. It takes a very small amount of bend to make a big difference. You just want to bend it a little bit, maybe every 4 inches or so. It's not a religiously accurate thing, but you can easily overbend it. So here's a bit of a time lapse of me doing that. The beauty of having the press outside is you can put long lengths through, you can bend it right up high and you're not hitting anything. So it's great to have machines you can move about. So then over to the bench here with the peg. So this is making the infill, lots of swirly metal work. This is a smaller diameter metal, so you can bend it by hand and get a bit more of a feel for it. Now I've bent these just as I'm looking at it in the vise, without any relation to the drawing. And then what I do is I work them into the frame how they seem to fit properly. Instead of making them to the space, I make them fit together into the space. So it's a little bit more free-flowing. So there they are there. As you can see here, starting to fit them. And they start to show you where they want to go, and some of them you have to manipulate a little bit. But generally, they sort of fit together quite well. They sort of tessellate. Again, it helps with it being random, if they are in fact made pretty randomly and with no relation to the space. As soon as you start trying to make something to fit something specifically, it then sort of looks forced or awkward. So then it was time to try and stand it up so I could see it as it would be seen in situ, which is stood up, not on the floor. So there we go, and it was at this point, after doing a bit more infill, I decided it wanted another leg on the right-hand side. So the idea is with this structure is it's a rose arch to go over a seating area on a wall, a bit of a sun trap, but it's as if it was grown. It wants to come out of the floor and look quite organic and natural and then flow into the wall. I didn't feel that it wanted to be part of the space. It didn't just want to look like it had landed there. And I didn't want it to have a side on the left, because then that would block off the entrance to the rear garden. And it just didn't seem to lend itself to the space. So that's what we're doing here. And then finishing it off with some spheres. So evenings and mornings were the time to do this in this incredible heat. But it focuses the mind. So there we go. It's also really hard to visualise something in the workshop because this is made for a space, and although you can use all the dimensions, the depth, the width, the height, it never looks quite right. It looks big or cumbersome, or the proportions don't look quite right. But you have to just keep checking those key measurements and check you're in the ballpark. And then once you get it to the space, which is what's happened here, put it on the trailer, it starts to make sense. And as you can see, there we go, that's where it's going to go. That's the piece of wood to hold it in position, but that's always a strange one. So there we go, that's it up against the wall. You can see the sun shining through is giving that wonderful shadow on the wall, which will obviously clock round as the sun goes round. So with that done, it's time to weld on the mounting tabs. These screw bolt onto the stonework behind to make it nice and secure. And of course, because we don't have a left-hand side, it is sort of fastened to the wall. It is suspended in a way. The feet on the right, with the spheres on, go on the paving, but the rest of it is hung on the wall. And there we go. So there's the gates I made before. So it's the same customer. So the gates are sort of inspired the arch, and it's a beautiful, beautiful cottage, a lot of heritage for the local area. And there we have it, fitted. What do we think? It's always really nice making something like this, but you end up put it in situ, and that's where it now lives, and you hand it over to the customer, and you almost want to just stand there and admire it, but obviously it is now their arch to admire. So you only get a short time to see it, but there we go. There's the twist. Now again, it's not too dense because it's going to have a rose growing over it, so by the time the rose is filled out, you do want to have a little light coming through. But the brief from the customers, they wanted to feel enclosed outside. So this, again, is left natural, so it will have that rust patina over time. So, yeah, pretty pleased with that one.